All right, here with Lee
Okay.
Banks, 25 plus years of coaching. Tidewater Phillies, was with the Tidewater Orioles. I think the Tidewater Mets too. It goes that far back,
Way back in the day.
way back. But been a staple in the travel community forever. We met in 1998, 99, around that time when I got to JMU. And so, Lee, thanks for jumping on with me.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. Thanks
Hey,
for having me.
when did fall baseball start in Virginia?
I don't know, man. I was going back writing notes about this. I think it was like my first team I did had to be I'm a dinosaur was with Michael Kadire and John Curtis, way back in the day. So I joke a lot with Michael. I said, "Hey, man, it's been way a long, long time for it, but he was the first team I had with him and Jason Du Bois and Curtis. So it was a fun times back in the
How
day.
come you couldn't get Jason Du Bois to go to JMU? I got tired of seeing that guy at VCU.
Key Dog was this good back in the day.
I think about the league back then too. You know, people don't understand how good the Colonial was back then, but everybody had big leaguers. You know, every
Oh my
every every
God, they
team in the
did.
Colonial had big leaguers back then.
Hmm. They did. They did.
You know, when you started, did you see travel ball heading the way it is now? I mean, it's gotten
Oh, I,
monstrous now. Did you see it going that route?
it's funny. I was sitting there just looking up some more notes of kids I've coached coming through and all that. I'm like, wow, from like five teams to like an abundance of teams, especially in our town and across. And you go to some of these national tournaments, and it's like, oh my God, it's like 200 teams in a tournament, and it's just crazy. I mean, I know we used to play on the weekends with like 4 to 5 teams. Like All Star Baseball Academy, the Mid Atlantic Rookies, Mark Cassetta with the Bayside
The
Yankees. So
Oriolanders.
Oriole Landers with Jim Gilbert and Dean Albany. So I mean, we used to play all weekend, and we used to have guys just go at we would go after each other, just beat one another up. But it was such a great thing to have the players play against one another, and it was it.
You know, that was for me coming from Indiana and the Midwest. We didn't have fall baseball, and so when I got there, it was in a good way. It was a shock for me to see the type of players that were playing against each other on the weekends, because we would host, then somebody else would host. You would just travel around to the different colleges on the weekends to watch guys, and it just that was the biggest thing stuck out in me, just the amount of talent that was on the field. I mean, even those teams, David Wright. I told this story in the office yesterday. You know, that team with David Wright, you had Ryan Zimmerman. Ryan Zimmerman didn't even really play a whole lot because you had the Upton brothers. Justin Upton was playing as an eighth grader. BJ was
Yeah.
older, and you think now about the career that Ryan Zimmerman had, and he, for parents or players listening in right now, if you saw Ryan Zimmerman as a sophomore, he was rangy, he hadn't grown into his body yet, but then you look up what he did in college, then as a professional, it's like you don't discount what a kid looks like at 15 or 16, because there's a lot of growing from that point until they get to college.
Yeah, I always tell people the same story. I mean, Mark Reynolds was on that team too, and he, the kids used to always joke and call him Skeletor, because he was so small, and then he got to college and he blew up, and Wright and BJ and those guys are pretty special dudes. So I mean, they made it pretty special. And I remember Kurt Eisenberg was on that team because you recruited him to JMU.
Yeah. Yep, and Kurt was a favorite of mine. And the funny thing is people told us at JMU that you couldn't get beach kids. Like that was always
Mm-hmm.
the thing. They were like, "Why are you recruiting him? He's not going to come to JMU." I'm like, "Well, I think we got a pretty good setup here, and I think if we can get him on campus and see what we got academically, I think it's going to be a good fit for him." And he was a special, special player for us because two way, and that's what I loved about him, because he was an elite center fielder, could hit, let one of those old right-handed hitters, left-handed throwers that had juice from
Exactly.
the right side, but then had just such good feel for pitching on the mound, and was also a great person. And I think David Wright was in that group too. I mean, David Wright used wood bat that fall. Everybody's using aluminum that fall, and David Wright is using a wood bat because that's the type of hitter he was. That guy's
He's a
magical at
special
wood.
kid, man. He's
Yes.
a special kid. I still remember. we played our last fall weekend down in North Carolina. We played at UNC, and the kids like they were all, hey Dave, put the bat down for one at bat, and he did it. The last game we played, and it was he hit one out at the Bosch. I was like, still, it hit the top of the building down there in left field, and he just smiled coming around third. I said, hey, he's got it, man. He's got that it factor.
Well, and he was one of those kids. I was never a proponent of kids signing out of high school, but he was a kid that when you talk to him on the phone, how mature he was, it's like, okay, that kid is going to be able to handle minor league baseball because of how mature he was as a 16, 17-year-old on the phone. Like you knew, not too many kids at that age when you talk to him on the phone talk to you like an adult, and he had everything.
I remember one of the best things, what stories about Dave was that every guy who recruited him, he called them back.
Yep.
Now you don't usually see that from kids, but he personally called them back, and he wrote them thank you letters too, which you don't ever see that uh, these days. But I mean, he was one of my favorites.
Who nudged you to get into travel baseball and start playing?
There's a guy from Churchland. His son pitched at William and Marion by the name of Robert Jones. He was a scout with the Orioles, and he was good friends with Jimmy Gilbert. And he asked me, "Hey, do you want to come along?" And then it just took off. And we at the time when we were the Mets, one of the area supervisors, Randy Milligan, was there. So we had a pretty good relationship with Randy and Robert and stuff like that. So it was a great setup, and the kids were awesome to work for. You didn't have to follow up or nothing like that. They just took care of their business.
Is it different now? You're on both sides of high school and travel. Is it different now, the
Mm-hmm.
relationship with high school and travel coaches?
It's to a point now. I think it's the college guys, the good college guys. They always work both ankles with uh, the high school coach and us. But I mean, I just think sometimes that the kids always think it's you have to work a little bit at doing it. It doesn't all come to you that quick. I mean, you have to invest to get back. And I think sometimes I hear some kids say, well, Zimmerman and Rutt. I said, those guys worked. I mean, and I use examples like, hey guys, there was times that they didn't go to high school football games on Friday night. They hit to like 11 and 12 to get better. And I don't think you guys are doing that right now. So, they didn't see the stuff in the background, what they what those guys did.
When you first got into it, I mean, did you say, okay, this is something that I can actually make a career out of, or was there any skepticism in the beginning, or was this like, okay, yeah, I think I can make a 25+ year career out of doing this?
I each year when we go back and we sit down now, start planning out for next year. I'm like, okay, do I have the energy? But just the kids at a whole, man. And the kids are awesome to deal with. You always try to. I mean, I think now there's a lot of guys if you talk to that you try to recruit the kids and parents because you got to look at makeup. And I just think sometimes back then you look at the Manny Upton back in the day. It's a great parent. His wife Yvonne was also awesome. Mr. Wright, Ron and Alicia was great to work with. Kadir's parents were first class. They got it. Now some parents these days, you just look at it. Look when you go to events, it's all about them, and just let your kid play, and everything will take care of itself. I believe.
Do you think that's been the biggest change as the parents? I don't think the kids have changed as much because I still work youth camps.
I
I
think
don't
the
think the
parents
kids have
have
changed.
changed.
It's the parents that have changed. And
I
I mean,
think
I
the
have an
parents
18
have
and 20 year
changed.
old, so I'm in this generation of new parents. So it's
Yeah.
the parents have changed. I just think they put so much emphasis on their kids, and I think they find value in how their kids are doing rather than let your child be independent. You need to have your own life as an adult. Let your kid have their own life too, and you can't put value in your kid's performance or if they're going to college to play a sport. Like you just can't do that as a parent. It's not healthy for the parent, but it's not healthy for the kids
Oh,
either.
I mean, you've been doing this long enough. I mean, in this game, you will fail 7 out of 10 times. I always use this example, and you'll hit 300, and you'll still be in the Hall of Fame. But the kids, I don't think the parents let the kids fail. And that's one of the things that's tough these days. I know the guys before their parents let them fail. That's how you get better. That's how you get a better mental makeup.
Yes.
You know, that's how I feel.
I mean, do you have to have those conversations with your parents, like to have a healthy perspective on what's realistic on the field for their child?
What we usually do, and we do it every spring, like halfway through these guys' high school season, we do a big Zoom meeting with all our teams in the two that I have, and we sit down and we discuss. You know, you're gonna have some fairs at these tournaments because the competition that we go to is so good, and you got to be able to compete. And college coaches want to see their guys compete, and they want to see guys that are interested to compete. So we're going to have failure. That's something that is going to happen. And I tell our parents too is the best thing to do is go down the left and right field line. Stay away from the gossip because there's a lot of people that stay in the stands and everybody loves the gossip in this thing. And I just laugh about it. I mean, I have a nephew that's 10 and I went to see his game the other day and I wore nothing but regular clothes and sat there. And the mothers are like vicious.
I mean, what would you like to see out of youth baseball right now for youth baseball coaches that are listening in before kids get to you? What would you like to see them do with them? Maybe what you're not seeing when they show up to you.
I just think now that just let your kids play the game and let them fail. I think that, you know, in life, we're all going to have failure, and you can't be there to pat them on the back. Let them learn from their failures. And that's some of the things now. You got kids now, and I always laugh about this now. We have it now, the portal. You know, it's going to happen, and there's nothing that's going to stop it. It's just part of the game now. And it's got to happen.
Yeah, I just, those are the ongoing conversations we have
Mhm.
with our Division 1 committee, with all the committees for college. It's like this isn't going away. How can we streamline it maybe a little bit more? But I mean, people are like, well, this is going on with behind the scene conversations. I'm like, well, there was always behind the scene conversations. It just was with recruiting. There was always
Yeah,
behind the scene conversations going on. It just was with recruiting at that point, not with guys transferring.
exactly.
You know, I think a little bit with the youth space too is the ranking systems that we have. Like it's not needed. It's not needed at that point. I think we also lose a little bit of the end of season. You're building towards something. Like for you guys, you're
Mm-hmm.
building towards Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's your build up is you're building towards Jupiter, but you have a long fall season before you get to that point where you're basically building up to Jupiter at the end of the year.
What I found this year, and I'll probably use it as a model, we'll probably stop at Jupiter. I mean, because I don't think you need to play so far into it. I think kids, they need rest. They don't need to keep pitching. They don't need to keep swinging until the last weekend in October, or some are still playing and finishing this weekend. I mean,
Yeah.
is this your body can only take so much. You have to recharge. You have to get ready for February of next year to get yourself ready. So and here in Virginia, we start. You know, officially we start in February, but guys start working out now in December or stuff like that. But guys need some rest.
When was the switch for that? Because obviously in 1999, 2000, you're playing a limited schedule. You're basically playing maybe 2 or 3 games on a weekend and then building up to that point. I mean, when did you see that switch where we're playing a lot more games?
I just think halfway, probably like 2010 to 2011, the games, the tournaments, you're playing this, you're playing that. And, to me, we used to play 3 games on four games on a weekend. It went back to three because a lot of guys were saying, hey, we're here for the kids. We're not here to keep playing here and there. But I just think that, as I said earlier, kids need to rest. I mean, you can only, play so much until your body's going to break down.
And they need training too. I mean, they're still
Exactly.
developing on that side. Like they have to be able
Mm-hmm.
to get into the weight room. They still need practice time. Like pros still need practice. Like, and I
Yep.
think we're upside down a little bit on that at times, where we're playing a lot more at the younger ages rather than training and practicing more, and then competing and see what you learn competing, and then go to practice again, work on what you need to work on, and then go compete. We're upside down right now.
Some parent told me the other day, I was just sitting there watching his kid play, my little nephew play, that they had played in like 100 games this past summer. I'm like, how many young kids can play in 100 games? I mean, me as a coach, I would hate to be there for 100 games all summer. That's funny
And
to
that's a
me.
parent thing too. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
it
parent
is.
not understanding that, hey, my kid needs to train just as much as they need
Mm-hmm.
to play. Who instilled your love of baseball? I mean, who got you involved in baseball?
Uh, I had a little league coach by the name of Bob Lane that he always was there for me if we ever needed a ride somewhere to be picked up. He's always there. My dad was a big influence. My dad was an umpire, so we used to always go watch my dad uh, do games and sit back, and people would like blast him for making a bad call. So I have the ultimate respect for umpires because he took a lot of blasting. But I mean, this, my dad pushed us, but my dad let us fail. And now I sit back as like I look at my brother. He's like, well, my little nephew Jackson. He said, dude, remember how Dad taught us? If he gets cut, you got cut because you wasn't good enough. So I mean, and that's one of the things now with parents. If your kid's not good enough, he's not good enough. And there's nothing that me and you can do about it.
Because I mean, you have always seemed not laid back, but you were hands off. It just seemed like you let your players play, which I always appreciated that about you. And you let the umpires umpire too. Like, you
Yeah.
weren't one of those guys that was getting into the umpires at all. Obviously, you came from a background with your dad being an umpire, so that makes sense to me now that you were that way you were because of your upbringing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's just part of the principles that were installed. Hey, you have a person there to do a job, let him do his job. Now the umpire gets pretty bad, I might say, but usually the umpires are pretty good. Knock on wood.
So how are you communicating with your players? I mean, not everybody's around you. So with logistics or scheduling or practice time or game times, how are you communicating with your players?
Usually it's been by the magic of the magic Apple iPhone. I've been like a dinosaur to all the new the X and everything like that. So I've hired a social media expert. So she's getting me more on top of everything. So she said, "Hey, coach, we need to do this." And usually I send her stuff all summer, and we talk and all that. So I'm learning more about that, and group chats and all that stuff. So kids, we're all connected that way. So
How long have you worked at Grassfield?
I worked at Grassroads Speed like year number 10. So before that, I was at Ocean Lakes for 20 years, and then 2 years at Green Run. So I've been with like he's like a brother to me, a guy by the name of Gary Spedden, and he's been an awesome guy to be around.
Have you liked doing both? I mean, do you like doing the high school side and also the travel side?
I mean, it's fun. I mean, because there comes a time is that when I'm at Grassfield and I volunteer, I'm not the main guy. I don't have to make the responsibility. He does, and then like I'm like the guys. Hey, good cop, bad cop. So but we still enforce the fundamentals and stuff of the principles of the program. But I mean, and then when they come to me, I have to sometimes talk to guys, put my arm around them, take them down the left field line, and talk to them a little bit. But it's my program, my name, and I think too, I've also had some pretty good guys around me that I let the assistants take care of it, and I just lay back and not unless something really happens bad, I have to speak up. But it's been pretty good. So
Has the game changed much for you, the high school travel level over the years, or
it
is
has.
it still
It's
just
just
baseball?
it's baseball, but then the kids are getting bigger. They're getting stronger, and then like hearing about now, the next few years you'll have all these crazy NIL deals coming into baseball. So it's just like you hear some of the West Coast kids have these NIL deals. Some of the East Coast kids they don't. But it's just the new this the way baseball is getting bigger and bigger. I mean, and it's some of the stuff that it makes you open your eyes a lot.
Yeah, that was the thing that stuck out at the World Series this year, the College World Series. I felt like it was the best field that we had, and you just look at the
Yeah,
type of athletes that are on the field now.
yeah.
You just didn't see it, and the draft has a lot to do with that now too. You're seeing
Huh?
a lot more infusion of high end talent that's passing the draft, and NIL is going to have a lot to do with that too. You're going to see, I mean, look at
Mhm.
what the football landscape now. You look at what some of the quarterbacks are getting in college; they're making more than some of the
Yeah.
NFL guys are.
You look at some of the cars these guys drive like Shador.
Are you anything you're doing the same over the last 25 years on field?
Basically, I'm just very honest with kids. I mean, I will tell kids, to this day, I don't believe you're a Division I baseball player. I said, hey, I've seen it. Now you guys might have to work a little harder. You might have another year. The thing that's so scary these days is that you still have some kids that commit so early. It's still happening, and some kids they go online, they see, hey, this kid committed, but I mean, you have to put in the work, and you have to invest, and that's the big difference right now. I mean, it's just kids just relax. Everything happens for a reason.
Have you seen it though with the rules changes? Have you seen it slow down a little bit with early commits?
It has slowed down. I mean, I
Okay,
know.
good.
I had a kid
Because you and I are on the
that
same
committed.
page. I just think the longer a kid can wait, the better it is for the kid himself because he can enjoy the process a little bit more, make a more informed choice on where they're going to school. But then I think the coach knows more of a finished product of what they're actually going to look
Mhm.
like because it's too much of a guessing game with eighth grader and freshmen. It's a guess. It's a toss. It's a coin toss.
Anyway, I had a kid like 8 years ago that committed right after his freshman year, but he's a freak of nature, and he was, his body was built. He just got bigger, stronger, faster, and it helped out. But then I had some kids. I had one kid that committed, and then he gets that call, 3 months before signing date, and saying, "Hey, we have to move on." So it's just it's two ends of the coin. I mean, two sides of the coin.
And it's interesting you said because I was going to ask you if your guys do shut down after Jupiter because I just think it's the right
Mhm.
time for them to get into the off season portion of things.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I just think kids, I mean, I wish that there was a mandate that people after Jupiter probably would have to shut down, but then, you would have some schools that couldn't have that. Some of the Division 2s, Division 3 JUCOs, they still couldn't recruit, which that's unfair to those guys.
Yeah, and I think that's where you have to have the conversation with the kid himself. It's like, hey, you're not getting Division I looks. They're off the road now, but you're
Mm-hmm.
not a Division I player, so you may have to let some other schools continue to get some looks at you if your ultimate
Exactly.
goal is to play in college somewhere.
Exactly. I mean, and that's why. I mean, I know we try to plan, and I mean, like next year we'll end probably the week before Jupiter. Just hey, when Jupiter's done, we're done, and you guys start relaxing a little bit, and then start training.
How do you navigate bullpens for your guys in the fall, like before their competition portion? How are you navigating that with guys to get side work in?
Usually here in Virginia, a lot of guys we have high school fall leagues, so they're pitching. Um, what we've been good at, I have a guy who's been with me for the last 5 years, Jaden Garnheimer. So usually on Wednesday night, we'll have our schedule for the weekend, and we'll script out the guys' innings, and we will email them and let them know, hey, you're pitching this game, this. By the way, what was your pitch count on Wednesday night or Tuesday night? So we'll have a better understanding of it. And he's done a great job. And we usually talk a bunch on Wednesdays.
So they're almost using their fall high school stuff as their bullpen then competitively.
Exactly, exactly. We have such a great group of high school guys in our state and region, and they don't overuse them and stuff like that.
Yeah, because that's always a big concern for me with kids is they go out and air it out on the weekends competitively, and then they don't do anything during the week, and that's where you see guys get banged up. It's because
Exactly,
they have
exactly. And
zero
I'm
build
like,
up time.
and I'm pretty good friends with a lot of the guys that we have in our program with their high school guys. So I always try to communicate with them. Say, hey, by the way, something's on Saturday or Sunday. You know, let me know about this. And kids are pretty. The kids are of the day that are pitchers that are pretty honest about it, and they they will let you know.
I mean, you've coached some of the elite high school players that we've ever had. I mean, how do you manage those guys, or do you not, or is it just let them get their
We man, I
let
mean,
them get their
we
reps in?
managed them. We managed them. I always laugh. I mean, BJ Upton tells this story to a lot of people
Well,
that
because I
I
told that
think
story in the office too. It's like BJ and Justin, like I think they knew they were so good. They just seemed bored sometimes, where they would just kind of roll it out there sometimes. And never knew if you had to like get into those guys a little bit, like,
it's
hey, you need to go a little bit harder.
this was one of the funniest stories ever, and BJ would probably kill me over this, but we um uh, we were playing in Virginia Beach, fall game, like late, probably the middle of October, right before we were ready to go junior. It's kind of chilly weekend, and
I
he's like,
was
"Coach, it's
there.
kind of cold. It's kind of cold. I'm not trying to go out." So I said, "All right, man, let's keep it simple. Hey, Jay, go get your gun, play short." No, no, no. My brother ain't gonna play short over me. So it's one of those things how you can know how to push guys' buttons and stuff like that. And it was just one of the funniest stories ever with the Upton brothers. But
Well, with Justin, was
you
there
got
any
to
concern with playing him that early? I just was so talented. It was like, and physically developed too. It was like, okay, he looks like a high school kid, even though he's out there as an eighth grader.
It was an eighth grader. I still remember sitting with Manny and him. I said, "Yo, you ready to do it, Jay?" Coach, I got this. I got this. And it was always competition with those two in the dugout all the time. Hey, I had a better hit than you, and you know Jay was still a few bases. CB, I got you today. So it was just you know they were pretty good at competing with one another, and we didn't. I really didn't have any problems with them at all. They were great kids to coach, and hey, we still talk at least once a month.
I was so happy for all those guys. I mean, you want
Yeah, they're
everybody to
awesome
do
dudes,
well.
man.
Like you're pulling for all those kids to do well just because you knew it was in there. You saw it. You're just pulling for those
And they're
kids
all.
to figure it
I
out.
mean, it's funny. They're all great friends too.
Yep.
I mean, and that's I know what you know going to Zimmerman's wedding. I mean, you have Kadir there, David was there, Reynolds was there. I mean, Justin the BJ's wedding, the same thing. So they're awesome players, but they're also awesome
Yeah,
kids
funny how that works.
and individual. Yeah,
If you're a good human being, usually the universe takes care of you. Hey,
exactly.
when was your first convention?
Let me see. I think it was Nashville. Nashville, like 5 years ago.
Okay.
A guy by the name, and it's funny. He's a good friend of mine, and he's helped coaching me. A guy by the name of Matt Ittner, who's the head coach of Frank W.
He's been
Cox
on the
High School.
podcast with me.
Yeah, and he talked me into going, and I went. It's like I mean, I talked my brother into going 2 years ago. So he goes and he's like a junkie. He buys all everything down there and packs it. He literally spends extra money to get it shipped back home because he man, all these vendors all in one spot. So it's one of the great things to learn. I mean, and we all have to learn doing this and some of the speakers, man. I mean, you guys do an awesome job in this, picking baseball minds and stuff like that. So.
Well, and we've grown so much on the youth and travel side too, and I think that's where we've
Mm-hmm.
continued to grow, where we're offering a lot more resources for youth and travel coaches now than we ever have.
Yeah.
With the youth stage, but also the vendor piece. I think that's what people that don't understand, that if you've never been and you're in the baseball space, you need to get there because you're going to save a lot of money throughout the year in one
Yep.
spot because you're going to get deal breaks at the convention that you don't get other times of the year. So it
Yeah,
works
I'll be
best for
there. I'll
everybody.
be there this year looking for Coach Com. So I tell Coach Com that there we are looking for Coach Com for our school. But I mean, I know that it's. I mean, it's like going to the Mall of America to see every vendor and stuff like that.
We've added the diversity committee. How can we continue to get participation up for minority players and coaches in baseball?
It's a pretty tough question because I know that it's I always, and I'll be frank with you, the kids of the day, they always can see themselves being the next Allen Iverson or LeBron James and things like that. And it's I always use this good story. Back in the day when I first started at Green Run, we had a Plexico Burst was a center fielder, and he always reminded me of Willie McGee. But he it was better for him to play football and basketball, and he put down the baseball. He was a one hell of a baseball player. So it's just one of those things you look at, and it's like kids have to invest a little bit more time, and some kids are naturally talented in another sport.
Yeah, yeah, that's a barrier for entry for if you want to be a good baseball player is you have to be willing to work at it and enjoy the work.
Yeah,
Like you said it with David
exactly.
Wright, those guys like to work. Like they
Yeah,
really liked being by themselves in the cage, working on their
yeah.
craft like that. I think that's
I
the
mean,
thing where the ones that make it, yes, you have to have talent, but the ones that make it, like they love the work. Like it's not boring to them. They don't find it menial. They really enjoy working and trying to get better.
I always use this. Kadir was like the grandfather for all of them, and he started the trend here in our area, and those guys usually followed him, and Michael was a tireless worker and things like that.
He
So,
committed to Clemson, right? He had committed to Clemson coming out of high school.
nah, you know what? It was out of high school. He was going to be a Seminole,
Was he
Florida
really?
State.
Okay.
Yeah, Florida State.
Because I knew Sully
If
was
you go,
recruiting him. Um,
yeah,
so
if you go in his office here in Chesapeake, he's got all the Florida State stuff up. So he's a big time no fan.
should go be a student assistant there. See a lot of pro guys
Link
doing it now.
Link might hire him. I don't know, but I think you had a great experience with the kids last year, Team USA. So they all loved him, and Michael keeps it real and stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you have a fail forward moment? Do you have something you thought was going to set you back, but looking back now, it helped you move forward?
Not really. I think in this business, and I always learned a guy who passed away this week, Tim Parrington,
Yeah.
was a coach at University of New Orleans, and when he was here at ODU with Pat McMahon, and when I was first getting into it, and he always told me, he said, Lee, keep it real with us. Do not tell any lies about players because once you lie, we never come back. And I always keep that in the back of my mind when I talk to people, talk to players. Hey, if you can't play, I'm going to be honest with the guy. Because if you're not honest and you BS a lot of guys, you know, guys don't come back. And I think over the last 30 years I've been doing this, I've had pretty good relationships. People always come back and ask, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I've been pretty good about it.
Yeah. Do you run into Coach Guzzo ever?
You know what? I did 2 years ago, and he's still the jovial kind of guy. I remember we all worked ODU camps, those late night stories. I remember him when way back in the day he was doing Atkins, doing
Yes, he was.
pepperoni sticks and cheese whiz, and I always had one of the great memories. But the guy used to eat pizza with the best of them, and we used to have some
Those late
great
night
talks in there.
conversations were the best for me just as a young coach. We had so many good, just that community that we had in Virginia at that time,
Yeah,
working the camps together. Just you couldn't get there. It was like a one on one mentoring session
yeah.
anytime you got around those guys at the field to watch games or at camps in the rooms. Like it just was helped me grow so much as a baseball coach and as a person because it wasn't just always baseball, it was life too that just helped me. I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it wasn't for the help of all you guys in that area at that time because I had a lot of learning to do and maturing and so it was a huge help to me along the
Yeah.
way with everybody.
I know. It's just you sit back. I remember the late nights at ODU camp, sitting there. I remember going down to Auburn one time because Chris Finwood was there. I remember being at the VCU camp with Coach Keys and Finney back then. It's just you learned a lot just sitting around the table. I remember, guys were ordering pizzas. We sit there and talk. and we would talk to like 1 or 2 in the morning, and you learn so much about it. You learn so much about how these guys were as people and individuals.
Mark McQueen helped me a lot on the throwing side of things. I would, we ran the infield stuff, but I would try to sneak over and hang out with the pitching guys if I could, just because you learn so much about arm health, how to teach different pitches.
Mm-hmm.
Like those camps were as good as it got, just from a learning standpoint, just as a coach and for the kids that were there too. Like you're not going to get that information anywhere else.
No, you're not. I remember going to. We used to go at Christmas time. VCU had a hitting camp right underneath the diamond. You would
Yes.
freeze underneath the diamond, but we would sit there and learn everything from Coach Keys and Ryan Morris back in the day, and then at nighttime we used to go to the Sheridan. They had everything there. We used to sit there and talk. You would learn so much about the little aspects of the game that you still use. But I mean, it's like, wow, back in the day, Key Dog said that, or Coach Mack at when Pat McMahon was at ODU, would learn. I mean, I know that he learned a lot about throwing a changeup back in the day at the ODU pitching camp they used to have at the old field house. So you learned a lot about the game.
I mean, for you, going back as long as you have, when you're trying to relay with hitters when they need to make an adjustment, because you've seen it. I mean, you've seen what it looks like, and you also
Mm-hmm.
seen, okay, they probably need to make an adjustment. How are you relaying that to guys as far as hitting adjustments?
I think I always use the principle KISS, keep it simple, stupid, because hitting such a hard game, I think you take these guys aside and you try to explain it very simple. And I'm not the hitting guru, so no anybody's listening. Yeah, I think just keep it very simple because it's hard. The pitching gets better at each level when you go up. I always tell our guys at Grassville, sometimes I say, hey guys, just get your foot down. Just get your foot down. Get your hands back. Get your foot down, and that's the easiest way. I mean, and that's the way I think because there's a lot of hitting guys out there, and I'm not the best. I just learned to keep everything very simple, and because this game is very complicated.
Move on time. That's a big one. When
Yeah,
when kids are struggling, it's usually timing more than anything else.
yeah,
They're not starting early enough.
exactly.
Yeah. Any evening or morning routines that you do that you like? You have any daily routines or habits that you do that you feel like help?
For me, it's 5 a.m. Sports Centers. Catch the news, get up. I know. Pretty soon we're about ready to kick in our weightlifting program at Grassfield, so it'll be like 5 a.m. Leave here at 5:45. We'll start at 6:15 because school doesn't start here until late in Chesapeake. So get these guys rolling and
How often are they
get.
lifting?
They are lifting like 2 days a week. And there's a guy that we're using that works with a lot of guys in our area by the name of Chase Kiriakou. He runs Beach Fitness and Performance, and he's done an awesome job. He's an ex-player at Norfolk State, and he's done a great job working with the kids in our area.
I took my son to the Foo Fighters concert in Virginia Beach about a month ago. So that's the
Nice.
last time I had been back. Like I hadn't been back
Wow.
since I left JMU, and I forgot how nice Virginia Beach is. It was.
It is. So you came probably the first weekend in October, so it's probably still warm here.
It was, but there was nobody. It was the middle of the week, so nobody was around. So like we had the beach to ourselves in the morning. We took a
Nice,
couple
man.
morning walks. It was awesome, and I don't get to spend much time with my kids anymore because they're getting older. So it just was a great. It was a great
Yeah.
2 days in Virginia Beach. But as soon as we drove in, I'd got all these memories rushing back of ODU camp, Virginia Wesleyan camp, and just really great
Yeah.
reminders. Really great
Yeah.
reminders. What are
This
some
place
final
has a
thing?
lot.
What are some final thoughts before I let you go?
Hey, thank you again for having me. Looking forward to January Dallas. Never been to Dallas, so looking forward to it. And just tell people to enjoy the game. It's such a hard game to play, and and just enjoy it. That's all. My final thoughts.
I mean, for the amount of big leaguers you had, people should listen to you. Like, everybody's like, well, it can't be that simple. It actually is that simple. Obviously, you have to have good players and they have to have talent,
Uh,
but just try to
you got to have pretty good
get out of their
genetics. You got to
way.
have pretty good
Get
genetics.
out of their way.
I always joke around with Manny and Yvonne, Justin and BJ's parents. Hey, Gene, do you want to sell them? So we always laugh about
Yes.
that. But I mean, I know just just have just be good at the game, and just you're gonna have failure.
Yes.
That's one of the things that parents don't understand. Your kid is gonna fail. Just be there for him, and it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, Lee. You're the best. I was looking
Ryan,
forward to
thank you
this,
so
man. You're,
much,
you're the
man. Look
best.
forward to seeing you.
Yep.